Alright, welcome back to Haunted House. This is a remake of an Atari 2600 game, which you were look at the Atari 2600 game and you were look at this game, you were like, they're like could be related as much as I could be related to the Queen of France, you know? Yeah, I mean, there's a possibility that I have a great uncle or aunt or mother or father that somehow had a brother or sister who happened to be married to one of the queens of France. But yeah, very unlikely. And it's just the nature of the limitations of the Atari 2600. What you could do with it, how much you could store on the cartridge, the graphics, the storage capacity. I mean, the jump between the Atari 2600 and the NES system is like leaps and bounds humongous. And even a lot of people will look back at the NES and go, it's so primitive. It's so archaic. It's so antiquated. And I get it. There's a lot of sort of, and you had to really, again, when the farther you go back in the generation, the more you really had to use your imagination as to what exactly you're looking at. The NES sort of being that bridge, that gap between, the Atari 2600 graphics, which is like this, is that a duck? Is that a pig? What the fuck is that? It's just a bunch of blocks to, well, it kind of looks like it could be a person. It looks more like like for instance, we look at Ninja Gaiden. And you're pretty sure you could see a ninja there. Not super clear though. But you looks more like a ninja than that square from Adventure. Looks like a human being. I don't know. It is what it is. I mean, we've come a long way. And then obviously when you get to the SNES age, you're getting a lot higher color, a lot more colors, a lot higher fidelity graphics, so it's a lot easier to tell what something is. But even then, sometimes, like facial features particularly, you're either dealing with a very cartoony looking Mario or chibi Link, or you just ignore facial features in that console version. And then you start introducing I want to say towards the end. I don't really know my SNES history well enough, but I remember towards the end. Hey Stephanie, get me out of here. I can't stand listening to these two argue. I would imagine. Luckily these guys are not difficult to deal with. Just a matter of waiting for them to charge, getting out of their way. And then, taking out one of the chains. I appreciate him giving me a cookie. Could definitely use the cookie, particularly now. Heal up some of that health I just lost. Yeah, I don't care if I took damage there. We're good. And then as soon as I knock that out, those guys are dead. I believe the pits and traps stop as well. You can now select Stephanie, because you've rescued her. Also, I believe she's important for the end of the game. Pretty sure you can't beat this game without rescuing your friends as well. But we'll see. I'm free. I think I'll stay here a little longer. I want a Bubba Blood dog. But, yeah. Yeah. So I got a little bit farther forward there. I upgraded my character a little bit. And we're now moving into the second area again, which we already did. So this is the, I guess the upstairs area. I'm kind of throwing my hands up because the place, the basement area, seems to be where you're rescuing all your friends from the chains. And, you know, yeah, this will be the last time we do this where I pause and let the video run. I'm gonna cut these out after this. But you could say this would be like your upstairs area, I guess. Your depending if your basement is underground, then it would be what I would consider your second story. But if your basement is, if your entryway is on up a pair of stairs, then maybe you could consider the basement floor 1 with your entryway floor 2, and this would be floor 3. But regardless, I think we are moving into more of like a living area. I don't know. I'm postulating, or whatever the right word is. So you saw there, nothing bad happened by me pausing it and leaving it on the pause menu, or not really a pause menu so much as is the map menu. So yes, we are going to cheese this game when we can. The survival rooms are possibly one of the most difficult things, because you've got not only guys that stand around and do a lot of stationary damage as you walk by them, but you also have patrolling guys whose job is to basically walk through an area so you don't get to hide in a corner with your lamp off for a minute or a minute and a half. And they just keep popping guys anywhere between 30 to 45 seconds into the challenge, and then they seem to stop towards, like I said, the last 15, 20 seconds maybe. We are going to take another run. Yeah, I want to stay away from the picture because normally the pictures have guys behind them. Not always, but usually, like, I'd say 9 times out of 10. There are other things that have pop-out guys, like we saw in the basement with the fishermen. And then I know we get sort of later in the game, I've run into where these guys will pop out of like televisions, or they'll pop out of sarcophagus as well. Because yes, not all of the runs you're seeing are the one. I'm not showing you every run I did because I don't feel like spending an extra 5 episodes of me doing these fail runs. So about every other run I'm cutting out, depending on how good or bad the run is. So if I have a particularly good run that lasts a long time, I may leave it in. Whereas if I have a very short bad run, I will cut it out. Just because there were a couple times where I would go deep in a mission, in a hallway or whatever you want to call it, and I would get like more than halfway to the boss, and then like my patience would just run out, and I'd start trying to sprint through shit, particularly in the missions that, ooh, look, it's another tool for the chef, I think. But my patience would run out, and I would like the missions with the raccoon stealing the key. I'll be like, oh, he's just right over there. I'll just run at him and corner him, and then meanwhile I proc 3 guys who end up dealing damage as the raccoon jukes his way between 2 shelves, preventing me from catching him. So in a fun side story, college football has been treating me relatively well this year. But again, by the time this episode comes out, it'll probably be a week later from when I'm recording it. So that means that you'll probably be seeing this, I don't know, probably the first or second Saturday in Okay, probably between the first and second Saturday of October, you'll probably be seeing this. So that means that at this point, we'll be another week into the college football. And there's a good chance by then my Panthers will have at least one L on their schedule. They've done very well in the beginning. They beat West Virginia and Cincinnati, which always a thumbs up when you can do that. You also beat Youngstown State, Kent. They played Kent State. I think they played Kent State. I forget. They played a MAC school, in other words, to open up the season. And then they're gonna play North Carolina, who I don't know how good North Carolina is. They're probably decent, but their record doesn't seem to suggest that right now. And then Syracuse, who's better this year than they've been in many past years. SMU's looking good. Clemson at some point will probably be a loss. We'll play Cal. I can't really seem to get a beat on Cal either as to whether or not they're good or bad. And then sort of finish off the season, we'll have Boston College, I think. There's another team I'm missing in there that is in conference that we're playing, like a Virginia or a Wake Forest or something. I don't know. The ACC's kind of messed up now, where back in the day I could tell you that every year we played. There were years where because Clemson was on the opposite side of the conference, there were some years we played Clemson. There'd be some years we play Florida State. There'd be some years where we play either both or neither, because they're on their side of the conference. But every year we'd always play, we'd always play Miami, who, I don't know what to say about Miami. Miami's obviously very good this year. I don't think we've faced them this year, so that's a positive. So this is an example of me chasing after the raccoon and taking unnecessary damage because I pressed the wrong button. Instead of hitting the A button, I hit the B button to dodge. But imagine that, but I run into like 4 guys or 5 guys instead of just the one. So, anyways, about college football. Been some surprises, obviously, this year. I didn't expect Alabama to continue to roll. I thought they might struggle without Nick Saban as their head coach, but they beat Georgia, so that was impressive. Though they did try to lose that game. I don't know if they'll remain undefeated by the time this episode comes out, because I don't know who they're playing after that. But I imagine they'll continue to remain undefeated. What's his face? Diggs. Florida State stinks this year. I don't know what happened to them. I mean, they were a team that last year went undefeated and got left out of the playoff, and this year, they're losing. I wouldn't say to everybody, because they do have a win, but they're losing. They're just, I don't know. It's like they lost the team already or something. I don't know. Again, unless something changes, Penn State's still undefeated, which is obnoxious, but they still have to play Ohio State. They have to play USC. So we'll see where Penn State lands at the end of all this. I only bring them up because they're a team that is perpetually the second or third best team in that conference year in and year out. I say second or third because there have been times where Penn State has gotten up to the point where they beat Michigan, but they don't beat Ohio State. Or they'll beat Ohio State, lose to Michigan. We're back here. This is an alternate. They give you two different versions of these rooms where you collect the 3 artifacts. So this is the alternate version. We're coming from the bottom, and there's a treasure to the left. And I think there is there 2 here, or is there 1? There's either 1 or 2 on this side, and then there's 1 on the other. And they give you an upper and lower balcony to deal with this stuff, I think. Just don't knock over these lampstands. That's not going to be good. And it looks like either a feather, or I'm guessing that's supposed to be garlic, like a string of garlic. Yeah, I just got eaten. Yeah, he's done more than half of my damage right there. I'm dead. Yeah. That was coming out on this porch was just not a good idea overall. I obviously didn't want to find out that, oh, sorry, the what's it called is actually you know, the last item is accidentally hiding on the porch. Sorry. You end up having to run all the way around twice to find where the last piece is. But getting back to my earlier story about college football, you know, Penn State, not a fan. Obviously, they're old-timey, old-school rivalry. So if you talk to people now, because Pitt hasn't played them consistently since the 90s, you know, and they have played a West Virginia more consistently, that's more of a rival than Penn State is. I kind of wish they would get back on a schedule, but again, with Pitt being in the ACC and Penn State being in the Big Ten, they operate under different rules. So in the ACC, the SEC, ACC tend to have their interstate matchups occur in the last week. So Florida, Florida State, Georgia, Georgia Tech, you know, South Carolina, Clemson. These are end of the year. One's in one conference, one's in another conference. That doesn't matter. But my understanding with the Big Ten is once you're done playing your non-conference schedule in the first month or so of the year, or first 2 months, roughly speaking, I'm not 100% sure, you're done. That's it. If you didn't play Pitt in the first 4 weeks of the season, you're done. The rest of the schedule has to be conference games, which I'd have to probably take a more deep look into that, because I feel like they had to have given USC an exception to that rule, because here's another school that's got their ass full, but USC always finishes every season they finish at home. In the years that they play Notre Dame on the road, their last game is at home against UCLA. In years where they have Notre Dame at home, they always schedule that because they're opposite of UCLA. They'll go away to UCLA, but they'll finish their season against Notre Dame at home. So, like I said, there's clearly an exception to the rules there with USC playing their end of the season. But you look at the other ones, Oregon already played Oregon State. Washington already played Washington State, because again, you got to get your conference games done in September or maybe early October. You got to get those out of the way, because again, Big Ten, we can't be playing non-conference opponents, even if they're long-time cross-state rivals that you've been playing for close to 100 years. Can't do that. That's against the bylaws, except if you're USC. Which, of course, is hypocrisy at its finest. But that's okay. You know what I mean? win 5 national titles, you could tell your conference what to do. Particularly, you know, win 2 in the last 20 years. Yeah, you definitely will tell. You will be dictating the rules, not the other way around. I would say more or less. I imagine if Wisconsin suddenly won 2 national titles, they still wouldn't be dictating what the Big Ten does. Because they don't have that long history of always being in it and winning multiple national titles as compared to like Ohio State or Michigan that brings viewers in. But wrap up my point about Penn State. I am interested to see after they play USC and after they play Ohio State and what, you know, what else do they have out on their schedule? They got to play UCLA, they got to play USC, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Washington, and then don't get upset by Maryland, Minnesota, Purdue either, you know. So I don't know what to say about that. I mean, you're in a situation where like you got to win 10 games to get into the playoffs, and then you probably have to win more than that to win the Big Ten Conference. Whether or not you care about that shit anymore, I don't know. It used to be a big deal with the playoff. Now it's more about, well, did you play in a conference like the Big Ten? Did you get 10 wins? Did you play people that you know, ended up with a decent record? Because again, conference opponents don't play everybody anymore. They seem to have 1 or 2 dedicated opponents that they agree to play every year, like Michigan, Ohio State. But in the end, you know, is there a possibility that Penn State could win 10, 11 games and not run into a USC, a Michigan, an Ohio State, insert other big powerful Washington, Oregon if they're up, Wisconsin if they're up, Iowa if they're up, you know, is there a possibility they could avoid, or rather only have only run into these I know I'm gonna make people angry, second tier teams only when they're down, you know. But I don't know, yet to be seen. Yep, that was an easy room. What I've noticed about this upper level is that you don't generally run into a situation like that where the pedestal for the owl statue and the owl statue are that close together. Or say ghost chains, like I wouldn't imagine these chains would be all that close to each other. So this room looks kind of small. It's a relatively medium-sized room, looks like. Not really sure I understand what's going on in this room though, because there seems to be a bunch of chairs set up like I see. The chairs are set up to watch the piano player play piano. But again, this isn't a theater, the house, but it's also, I don't know, whatever. I'll tell you like the things that people who have a lot of money like to put in their house, and I would put none of these things in my house. One, bowling alley. Like, I have a lot of money that I can put a bowling alley in my house, but at the same time, like, I also like a very blue collar sport of bowling. You know, I mean, to each their own. I mean, we've gone through different time periods when, you know, lobster used to be considered a peasant's food because lobsters were just bottom feeders, and now lobster's considered like a delicacy in the United States. Like, the fuck that change? I was also told a story about white bread back in the day. Only the rich could afford a bleached bread. And then eventually it became, I wouldn't say more mainstream, but it became more widely available to get white bread, even though it lacked a lot of the nutritional value that the grain bread like wheat bread, rye bread had in it. But that wasn't the point, you know. And now we sort of have kicked back in the opposite direction, where you have a lot more people eating whole grain breads and shunning the white bread because it has no nutritional value to it. Or so says Chris. Whether or not I'm not a dietitian by any stretch of imagination, I just kind of, if you tell me something, you find a good source, like for instance, you find a dietitian or a nutritionist or someone who, hell, even people who make bread, and you say, well, what goes in the bread? And you say, oh well, there's nothing in the bread except for air. You know, I'm more likely to believe the man who's making the bread, or the scientist who's you know, got the bread in a beaker trying to determine what sort of nutritional value it has, than, you know, necessarily like, well, did you know that Joe Biden is a secret Muslim? It's like, that seems like a lie. Donald Trump likes to eat penises for breakfast. Like, I don't know about that, buddy. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I'm not gonna say either way. And, you know, you making a ridiculous claim like that does not make me want to believe you any more than not at all.